Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episodes 7 and 8 of Steven Universe Future, Snow Day and Why So Blue. And Snow Day actually begins with Steven adulting pretty much. Basically, as Steven is now the head of Little Homeschool, he has responsibilities that he must attend to before he actually, gets to his day-to-day routine, which not only includes running out and doing errands, but also scheduling what to do in Little Homeschool, meetings, classes, all this various things, all the things you do when you run an institution like that. And unfortunately, as a side effect of doing all these things, Steven unfortunately can't spend any time with the gems. And while the gems do try to prod him to spend a little bit more time with him, well, every time they try, he just kind of lightly pushes them away. Like, for example, Amethyst tries to get Steven to have breakfast by putting eggs on her face and says, "Are you ready for the most exceptional meal of the day?" But Steven just kind of lightly walks away as he says that he gets all of his nutrients into protein shake. Garnet tries packing him a bag with his cheeseburger backpack, but he says he doesn't use it anymore and he's already got the stuff he needs. And then likewise, while Pearl is able to stop Steven before he leaves because it's cold and she wants him to bundle up, well, again, Steven still tries pushing her aside because, well, he has to hurry. And on top, even the gems are like, "Well, why are you going out so early? Classes don't start for a couple hours." And Steven says because he has errands to run. And so while the gems do say that Steven could use the warp pad technology, well, it's more effective if Steven just uses his car to, go into town and do all that stuff. So despite the gems' best efforts and them clearly trying to be supportive, Steven is not exactly putting any time aside to hang out with them. It's kind of it's a funny little inverse, as when Steven was younger, he tried similar things with them, and now it's the opposite. And it continues on as later that day when Steven finally does return after a long day of work, the gems try to get Steven to, sit down and do stuff with them, but each of the activities they present are not things that Steven really wants. Like, for example, they try and watch the spin-off of Dogcopter called Pupcopter, which Steven doesn't want to do because that's for little kids. They want to do sheet masks that look like animals, but Steven doesn't want to do it because he has a skincare routine. And while the only real appealing thing that, for me at least, that they offer is pizza, well, it's pepperoni pizza, and apparently Steven went vegetarian a month prior. So yeah, none of that's really for Steven. Plus, he's already eaten, so it's not really a thing. So he just kind of goes to his room to finally rest. However, the next day, as Steven is getting ready to head out for the day, well, he hits a bit of a snag. For you see, the previous day, it was clear that it was snowing out. Well, the snow didn't stop. And as a result, all of Beach City, including Little Homeworld, is snowed in, meaning that Steven cannot do anything for the day, and so they kind of have to they have to essentially cancel all classes for that day, and so yeah, it's a snow day. However, while the gems think of this as an opportunity to have a day off and goof off, spend more time together, even maybe read a book of No Homeboys, Steven wants to take this opportunity to try and reformat his schedule, since, as he puts it, this will put everything out of whack, so he needs to get everything in order. So, yeah, despite the fact that Steven doesn't have to go to work, he's still not putting aside any time for the gems. However, the gems are not taking this shit lying down. They are gonna get Steven to hang out with him, and they hatch a plan. We don't see them hatching the plan, but it's clear they're all in on it. For you see, as Steven is sitting around organizing his schedule, Amethyst comes up and kind of remarks how he used to have a better work-life balance when the diamonds were their enemies, but as Steven once again tries brushing her off to try and do his thing, Amethyst posits, "Hey, you know what we haven't done in a long time? Steven tag!" At which point she ends up shapeshifting into Steven, or more specifically, 14-year-old Steven. Which Steven's like, "What the heck's going on?" And yeah, the plan? The gems are gonna try and get Steven to play Steven tag. Only the caveat is, if they tag Steven, he has to shapeshift into, as they call it, Classic Steven. And so, that's the rest of the episode. And I love it. I love it so much. I love the lengths of the gems go to get Steven to play. While he jumps around the house trying to avoid them, one by one, each of the gems get pulled into the game as they get everything set in motion. At first, Steven hides from Amethyst by hiding in the bathroom, and then when he comes out, it looks like she's gone, but Garnet tricks Steven into finding her by stating that she lost Cat Steven, and so, as Garnet gets him into position in front of a cupboard, Amethyst jumps out, and when Steven dodges it, she tackles Garnet, who because Garnet's kind of a shitty actor, she says, "Oh, what an unforeseen turn of events!" Before she shapes into Steven, and the pair of them gang up on Steven. And while he tries running around, tries trapping them in Rose's room, eventually he runs into Pearl, who apparently has been doing some shoveling. And when Steven tries using Pearl as a proverbial shield, well, she gets tagged. And while Steven at first thinks this gives him a break because, well, Pearl doesn't shapeshift, well, clearly her love of Steven and wanting to spend time with him kind of trumps whatever feeling she has towards shapeshifting, as she shapeshifts into her own version of classic Steven, which I like, because she even has a little nose. It's kind of nice. And I'll give credit where it's due. I love that they just for a few seconds, everyone just stops caring about the game because, hey, she shapeshifted. That's cool. Even Garnet and Amethyst are just cheering for her. It even seems like, oh, good for her. Unfortunately, though, it's now 3-on-1, as they all just start chasing Steven around the house, and no matter where Steven goes, he cannot get away from them, and he doesn't want to play. He keeps telling them, "I'm not playing this game," but they're not giving him a moment of rest. It even gets to the point where Steven just actually jumps out of the house and runs out onto the snow-covered beach, thinking that if he can just wait them out, he'll eventually have to turn back into normal forms, because, well, gems can't stay shapeshifted for too long. Unfortunately, Steven underestimates just how much these three want to get him in on the game, because guess what? They start using just to chase him down. First, he gets attacked by a Steven version of Sugalite, then a Steven version of Sardonyx, and then finally a Steven version of Opal. All of them just, again, it's like, just what the it's just so balls to the walls insane. I love it. And as Steven keeps outmaneuvering them again, they finally pull out the ultimate trump card as all the gems fuse together into Alexandrite. And like the other fusions, it's a Steven version of Alexandrite. She even fucking fire breathes on Steven. And I'm just like, what the is going on? But Steven quickly realizes they're not gonna give him a moment's rest unless he joins the game, so he says he joins the game, and so he starts avoiding Alexandrite, who chases him up. He jumps all the way up to the lighthouse above. He thinks that Alexandrite can't get up there, but she manages to head him off, and she ends up unfusing. Back into all the base forms of the crystal gems, who three of them just immediately dive bomb Steven. Thankfully, Steven's able to knock them aside with some well-placed hand shields and his enhanced strength, so it looks like he won. But I have to remind you of something. I said she unfuses back into all the base gems. When I say that, well, remember listen to my wording. I said earlier he knocked aside 3 of them. There's one gem he didn't get. And so as Steven lands on the top of the lighthouse and looks down, seeing the forms of Amethyst, Pearl, and Ruby, he turns around thinking that he's won the day, only for Sapphire to tag him, and Steven officially loses. So, yeah, they got him. And as such, as Steven falls to the ground below, obviously halting his fall using his floating powers, Sapphire comes down and refuses back with Ruby, and so Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl are encouraging Steven to turn into classic Steven. And while he first puts up resistance, eventually peer pressure does get the better of him, and as such, with a grumpy face, he does shapeshift into his younger self. And while the gems are like, "Oh, he's so cute," Steven just finally calls them out on all this, because he doesn't like the fact that they're constantly trying to push all this, because, well, it feels like that they don't actually see him as an adult. It's tough for him to take on all these responsibilities, but no matter what he does, he feels like the gems still see him as a kid. And so as a result, he just tells them that he wants them to see him who he is as he resumes his normal form, and the gems, they do apologize. The thing is, part of the reason why they're pushing this so hard is just because they want to spend time with Steven, and they are proud of him for all of his accomplishments. It's just that he hasn't had time for them in a while, which, like I said, is a nice little inverse. And so, basically, part of the reason why they were doing all this is because they just wanted to spend more time with the kid, and of course, the only times they usually spent with him were when they were doing silly stuff when he was younger. And as a result, but at the same time, yeah, the gems do acknowledge that they did push it a little too far, and so after giving Steven a group hug, they all apologize. As such, they all tell Steven that if he wants to get back to his work, it's fine, they won't push him. But it's clear that Steven has kind of actually that they did get that what they did kind of get through to Steven's sillier side again as he tackles Garnet and tags her. And so, yeah, the game keeps going, but they do decide to update it as Garnet shapeshifts into modern Steven, and as such, he and Garnet immediately chase after Amethyst and Pearl, with all of them running down a hill laughing together. And so, the episode ends as we cut to the next day as Steven and the Crystal Gems are packed in the Dondai, most of the snow is melted away, and they all drive off to go run errands and head to little homeschool. It's, again, pretty nice stuff, so... But anyway, with that out of the way, we move on to the next episode of this batch, Why So Blue? And this one, believe it or not, is a Lapis episode. What's going on is that Steven has heard rumors that there have been a pair of Lapis Lazulis who have been going around planets, well, destroying them, so to speak. Of course, since in the new era of the Gem Empire, destroying things is a big no-no, Steven decides that he needs to go check it out, with Lapis accompanying him because, well, again, it's Lapis Lazuli, so maybe she'll have some insight on that. As such, they end up taking a warp pad straight to the planet to their current planet, and after Lapis and Steven take a moment to kind of admire the wildlife and fauna and all this stuff, with the local animals of this place, like being little adorable plant hybrids, they do eventually come across the two Lapis Lazulis that are destroying everything. And yeah, we see more of what Lapis's purpose was in the original Gem hierarchy. Essentially, they terraformed planets utilizing their aquakinesis. And as such, we see these two Lapises as they're doing that right now, as we see a good bit of the planet's surface has already been raised, as they've just kind of sliced and diced all these rock formations and so on and so forth. As such, Steven and Lapis call out for them, and while at first the two Lapises attack them, well, thanks to a well-timed bit of Steven's shield, they are able to recognize, oh wait, that's Steven Universe. And so, they come down and want to know what he's doing there, with one Lapis, who I'm going to dub Nice Lapis, who is adorable. I love her look. She's got, like, fluffy hair and freckles, asks if Steven is there to check on their progress, while another Lapis, one with straight hair with curls, who I'm going to call Rude Lapis, immediately asks why he brought another Lapis, since, well, they're clearly doing a good job on their own. As such, Steven explains to them how they're not supposed to be doing all these things, the Gem Empire's fine now. They don't have to keep destroying things anymore. They can do whatever they want. To which the Lapis respond with, yeah, they are doing what they want. Yet, turns out this pair of Lapises kind of like destroying things. They like terraforming planets. And so, well, they want to keep doing it. They just want to keep going, which, yeah, kind of a big no-no. And as such, Steven immediately tries reiterating the whole do whatever you want thing by saying they can't destroy planets, which the Lapises get upset with because it does kind of contradict what he said before. As such, Steven and our Lapis decide to step aside, and while Lapis kind of wants to go for the throat, so to speak, because these Lapises are being difficult, Steven once again tries using a more kind method, so to speak. After all, the Lapis we know was eventually turned to the good side, and yeah, it took a bit of, hardship to get her there, but she did see a lot of positives in the world, and that did help her eventually come to a better place and become a better person. As such, Steven thinks that if they can show these other Lapises a different way of thinking, then they'll come over as well. As such, Lapis is a little frustrated at this, she does still decide to go with Steven's way of thinking. And so, as such, they rejoin the other two Lapis Lazulis, and they do try and, get them to open up, as they showcase as they try to make them see the beauty of nature and all that stuff. The other Lapises don't care. They much prefer the color of rocks and mud. As such, Lapis tries showing them, utilizing water constructs, which he first uses to make art before making other kinds of constructs, like a lawn chair and a drink and sunglasses for Steven. And so the other Lapis decides to use that by making a buzzsaw, which they use immediately to slice through another rock formation, which they think, oh wow, this is amazing. As such, they decide Steven and Lapis decide to come at it from a different angle, try playing a song and showcasing them dancing, and while Nice Lapis seems to be a little open up to it, as she does start getting into the rhythm of it, all it takes is a sideways WTF look from Rude Lapis to make her just immediately stop in place, which I'll get to my thoughts on her later, but ultimately, yeah, that kind of puts the kibosh on that. So if that doesn't work, Steven decides, well, what if we try singing? And so he is able to urge Lapis to try and showcase them this, and so Lapis decides to start singing a song. In this case, the titular "Why So Blue" of the episode, and it's a it's a nice, slightly upbeat song, which is not, it's really meant to be kind of a reflection of how far Lapis's character has come from when we first saw her. As she sings about about the prisons that she had for herself, like the mirror or the fusion, but how she saw all these beautiful things in the world, how she learned to embrace it, how she wants to spend all of her time with her friends, like with Steven, and she loves seeing all these new things now, and she's happy that she embraced it, and basically the song at its core is just about opening up and seeing the wider world for what it truly is, rather than just limiting yourself. The other Lapises laugh in her face and thinks that it's stupid, and that while Steven may have dulled this Lapis, they're not going to be so keen. They're not going to listen. And as such, after telling Steven and Lapis to royally F off, the other two Lapises fly up and continue deciding to terraform this. As such, our Lapis, finally hitting her limit, decides, fuck it, they're not gonna listen. We gotta force the issue. And while Steven tries calming her down, well, at this point, I'm kind of agreeing with Lapis here. These two bitches need a talking to, and I think Lapis is the one that can do it. As such, she flies up and, well, she gets into a fight with the other two Lapises, as she ends up using as they get into a battle of water as they begin using water constructs on each other. Unfortunately, whatever Lapis uses on the other two Lapises, they throw right back at her. For example, Lapis creates water fist hands to flick them, so they create a giant water fist to smack her around. As such, Lapis tries holding them in place with water chains. They make another one to hold our Lapis in place. As such, after they think they got her cornered, they create another buzzsaw with the intent of trying to slice and dice her. But just as the buzzsaw is about to hit her, it freezes in place, and it shatters, as suddenly all the water in the immediate area comes flooding right at them, with our Lapis looking mighty pissed off. As such, the entire area below where Steven and the creatures of this planet are standing gets flooded with water, causing the other two Lapises to get swept up in it, and when they come to the surface, they see a giant water construct of our Lapis as she just stands over them looking mighty furious. And she basically just tells them, who's dull now, as she forms a giant water spear in her hand, which is enough to frighten the other two Lapises into even just holding each other. But before she can deliver the coup de grace, she looks over and sees Steven, who, yeah, does kind of look a little disapproving of this whole thing. He doesn't look angry, but it's more like a look of, oh no. And as a result, that kind of helps calm Lapis down as she dispels the big water construct and gets rid of all the water flooding the area. As such, the other two Lapises, now scared shitless, immediately decide, okay, you want us to stop terraforming? We'll stop terraforming. You're the big one. You're the big guy around here. We'll do whatever you want. And while Lapis isn't exactly okay that that's the message they took, since, they think because they saw what she did and saw it as strength, Lapis thinks that was weakness and that restraint and patience takes strength. I'm of the argument of, well, they weren't exactly listening. I feel like that maybe a more direct approach might have been necessary, even if you didn't go all out, which, again, I'll talk about that later, but ultimately Lapis decides that these two Lapises are a lost cause, and she just walks off back to the warp pad. And so before Steven goes to join her, he gives the pair of Lapises pamphlets a little homeschool, and so he and our Lapis head back to Earth. And while Lapis apologizes for losing her cool like that, Steven says it's fine, and Steven says it's alright, and that Lapis has come a long way, and Lapis admits that part of the reason she got so frustrated is because she looked at these other Lapises, and it reminded her of her back when she was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. However, as Steven and Lapis are just talking, the warp pad for a little homeworld activates, and when we see the person coming through, is Nice Lapis, who, upon seeing Steven and our Lapis, asked, hey, is this that school you were talking about? And the episode ends as Steven and Lapis happily welcome her in, so, yeah, there you go. Alright, so my thoughts on these episodes. Well, first, Snow Day. Now, I mentioned last week how one of the episodes in this video was one of my favorites in both Steven Universe Future and just Steven Universe in general. And that is Snow Day. Snow Day is hands down my favorite episode of the entire franchise. And it's not because anything big happens in it. It's not because the message is especially poignant. I mean, it's a good message, but no. What makes me love Snow Day, and what makes it my all-time favorite Steven Universe episode, it's the game of Steven Tag, which I know is going to be a weird reason to like this episode and consider it my favorite, but it's just so insane! Like, oh my god, it's just so balls to the walls crazy that I can't help but love it. I am a sucker for a good chase. Basically, when it basically just kind of just basically having people chase someone playing around, and while the person may not be exactly okay with being part of the chase, I kind of just love it when there's like no ill intent. It's just, come on, play with us, come on. And yeah, I'm of the and yes, while I understand the argument of the other guy of not wanting to be a part of this game, at the same time, I love kind of seeing a good chase scene when it's done right. And I gotta tell you, this was done right. I loved seeing the Crystal Gems go to the lengths they did just to get Steven to be a part of the game, because, oh my god, it's just so insane. I love how far they're willing to go. I love how intricately they have it planned. I love the moment of doom that sets in when Steven realizes that Garnet, Amethyst, and Pearl are coming for him. I love seeing Steven bolt around the house and seeing them just appear at every place, and see them appear wherever he goes. Like Steven tries throwing that, like I said, Steven locked him in Rose's room, but then Garnet comes running out through the heart of the temple because, well, there's a direct route from Rose's room to there. And so when Steven tries hiding goes into his room and hides under his covers, Amethyst is already right there, just waiting for him. And when Steven runs away, he runs into Pearl, who gets tagged and brought into the game. And again, he just goes all over the place to get away from them. And I love how he distracted Pearl by throwing his shirts on the floor, and because Pearl is so OCD, she had to get all the shirts folded up and get Steven out to run away from her. I love how when he tried to ditch them by running outside and waiting them out, they just upped the ante by fusing into Sugilite, Opal, and Alexandrite. Not in that order, but it's just like, oh my god, they really want this kid to play the game. And even gets to the point where they fuse into fucking Alexandrite. It's just insane. And I fucking love it. I love it when Steven finally says, I joined the game, and then Alexandra just smiles, and he jumps around trying to outmaneuver her before he gets to the lighthouse, and the gems finally manage to get Steven by, well, tricking him. They unfuse all the gems, unfused, which means Ruby and Sapphire also unfused, which yes allows us to see Ruby and Sapphire in their own forms of Steven, as Ruby's looks like Steven but red and with a headband, and Sapphire's looks like Steven except the hair is covering her eyes. So again, it's funny stuff, but again, it's just like so insane and stupid, and it's all just for a game of tag. And when Steven thinks he finally has him and Sapphire just gets him, they treat it all serious, like, oh no, this is the end of my adult life. Like, it's just a game of tag, kid. Oh my god, it's so stupid, but I love it. I love it all. It's so batshit crazy, insane, all over the place that it's just amazing. I get so into it. I have the biggest, goofiest smile when I see it. And I remember when I first saw the episode and they pull out Alexandra who breathed fire on Steven, I thought, oh my god, I love this episode. And I do. It's just amazing. And the game of Steven Tag alone is what propels this episode as my favorite episode of Steven Universe. Just for the lengths the gems are going to get Steven to be a part of the game. It's glorious, and I love it. But the thing is, my personal bias aside, the episode itself still, I think, holds up on its own, especially as a character piece for both Steven and the gems. For the gems thing, you could make an argument that their whole standpoint of not understanding Steven's a grown-up is a little out there because, well, we kind of had dealt with this message in the Steven Universe series proper with Garnet and her future vision thing when the pool hopping episode, but I'm kind of willing to forgive that because the basis for why the gems go to the lengths that they do is because they haven't been able to spend as much time with Steven as they would like, and so they're just trying to recapture that at the essence of what made them originally want to play along. And then, like I said, they recognize that Steven has responsibilities now, and they're trying to respect that. It's just at the end of the day, they just want to spend time with their favorite kid, and they don't have that as much anymore because Steven is too busy adulting and attending to his responsibilities. And likewise, yeah, Steven does kind of have the and likewise with Steven's case, yeah, like Amethyst said, his work-life balance is really not that good. He's prioritizing more of his business life than, spending time with his family and friends. Which, again, I understand that. It's like running a little homeschool is probably not just like an easy task, but at the very least, he's not putting any time aside for his friend for anyone close to him. And as a result, it's clear that Steven is a little, I'm not going to say he's drained, but it's clear that a lot of the fun that Steven used to have is gone. It's just basically business Steven now, and he's very much and yeah, it's a good thing that he's taking the job so seriously, but the problem is that he's also kind of lost a bit of his lust for life, which, yeah, I understand that happens when you become an adult and you kind of have to leave a bit of that childlike wonder behind, but it's like there's none left. It's just clear this kid's a little dead inside. So the thing, and that's another which I kind of like too, as ultimately the lesson is on both fronts, because when you actually come down to it, neither side is completely right or wrong in this conflict. Yes, the Gems were wrong in pushing things as far as they did just to get Steven to hang out with them. But by that same token, Steven was also wrong because he was prioritizing one part of his life over another. And as a result, it was kind of becoming a bit unhealthy. And as a result, yeah, something did need to happen to break Steven out of that stupor. And yes, while, like I said, what the Crystal Gems did definitely pushed it too far, well, he did need a break. He did need to spend time with each other. And with how much he was, and with how determined he was to get back to his schedule, it makes sense. I think maybe going as extreme as the Gems did might have been the only way out of it. Again, ultimately, it's a nice lesson on two fronts, as the Gems have to recognize that Steven has grown up, and a lot of the things that they used to do with Steven they can't do anymore, because Steven's not the same kid who liked that stuff. So if they want to spend time with Steven, they gotta learn that Steven has grown up. Which again, you can argue that Garnet already knew the lesson, but again, I will still argue that they were essentially just trying to recapture what that same spark in life, and they just didn't recognize that Steven's interests changed as he grew older. So again, I'll forgive that I'll forgive that plot hole. I'll forget that plot or character hole. I don't know. It's a character plot hole, so whatever. But at the same time, so I like that. And then likewise, Steven kind of learned that, yeah, maybe it is still okay to loosen up and spend some time with his family, because after all, they're still his family and he still loves them, and hey, maybe it's still fun to do some childish things every once in a while. As the doctor once said, what's the point of being grown up if you can't be childish every once in a while? So again, it's good stuff. It's just really good stuff, and I do like the moral lesson. I do kind of like that moral, as it's a moral on two fronts, and it's presented in a way that showcases that neither side is completely in the right with their arguments, and yet neither side is completely in the wrong either. I like it. It's a good conundrum. It's a good conflict that works organically, and like I said, the chase and the game of Steven Tag is just, it's so balls to the walls crazy that I just love it. And as a result, not only will I say that this is a good episode, but ultimately, it's just my favorite episode of Steven Universe. So there you go. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's also talk about Why So Blue and why I like this episode. And quite frankly, Why So Blue is just an alright episode. This one definitely feels like a lot more filler than anything, as it doesn't really feel like anything is expanded on in this episode. But with that said, it's not bad either. If I had to really say anything about Why So Blue, is that the biggest thing that we get out of it overall plot-wise is that this feels like a kind of a nice summation of Lapis Lazuli's character. Cause the thing is, at this point in time, Lapis Lazuli's character has come full circle. We already got her capstone of her character development in the Reunited episode when she wound up officially joining the Crystal Gems when she returned to Earth to help them fight the Diamonds. That, I think, was the big moment in her character that essentially kind of brought everything that she had gone through together and did essentially showcase just what she showcase the kind of a new person that she became. So likewise, anything from there really does feel superfluous, unnecessary. We already got her to her ending point character-wise, so what's the point of having her here now? Well, put simply, we see what that person in action. And quite frankly, it kind of acts a nice reflection, no pun intended, of how far Lapis has come in her journey and all the struggles it took for her just to get to this point in her life, to the point where she wants to protect life, when she begins admiring all the beauty around her, that she wants to help others, that she wants to stay calm and composed because she has friends that she wants to be this person for, like Steven. I like that way. I love how they showcase that in the episode. And part of the conflict for why she wants to get the Lapises on their side, and why she even first advocates for going the violent method first, is because when she looks at these Lapises, she can't help but see herself, which I kind of get that. And that, again, that kind of goes back further into the whole character development thing and how far she came. Because Nice Lapis and Rude Lapis are like her at once upon a time. They're not like carbon copies of her. Like they're not carbon copies of her. As we've established, while gems of the same type can typically have similar demeanors, they're not note to note the friggin' same either. You look at the original rubies from the Ruby Squad, and all of them were vastly different. You can look at any number of different pearls, and all of them have very different demeanors, despite the fact that they all essentially fill the same role. And likewise, these two Lapises, while having similar personality traits to our Lapis, are not note to note the same either. I mean, you can see similarities, like with how our Lapis was a bit of a goofball. We kind of see a bit of that goofiness come up in these two Lapises too. It's just that while with our Lapis, that goofball nature came about with her messing around with Steven and having fun and having beach summer fun, as they called it. With these two Lapises, it's more finding enjoyment in seeing others suffer. And likewise, we see a bit of Lapis's more angry nature come out, as, well, it's a bit different than the Lapis that we know, which makes sense. By the time that we met our Lapis, she had been through quite a few ordeals to the point where was kind of hardened, so to speak. She was more angry than anything, and so her goofier side was kind of pushed to the back burner, as when she actually was given some form of freedom, she went balls to the walls crazy and unleashed all of her pent-up rage on the people that she perceived as her enemies, and that which at the time was the crystal gems. But likewise with these two Lapises, the anger and rage is mixed with the goofy nature, and as a result, it paints a picture of what a lapis lazuli typically is when they aren't dealing with their trauma. Of course, as these lapis lazulis happily destroy things for the thrill of it, and then if anyone tries telling them no, they just laugh in their face and then show to them, hey, this is why you don't mess with us, by using their strong abilities, in this case their aquakinesis, to essentially knock them aside, which, again, I kind of find interesting, as it gives us a window into how our Lapis used to be before she started experiencing the trauma, like when she was trapped in the mirror. As, like I said, being trapped in the personality traits that a regular Lapis is supposed to have were completely eliminated, but some personality traits were clearly more enforced because of her situation than others. So, again, I like that. Like I said, you can see traces of that. But likewise, I also kind of like how the lapis lazulis are brought down, because, well, it's a very different type of thing. It's very unique in that regard. And this is going to come back later in Steven Universe Future to a much more heart-wrenching degree, but essentially, if you look at the lapis lazulis and use both our lapis and these two lapises as examples, the only way you can really get through to them is with force, because force is the only thing they respect. These two Lapises were told, hey, you can do whatever you want now, and they decided, well, we'll just keep destroying planets because we can. So, and while Steven and our Lapis tried to get them to see reason and ultimately look at different perspectives on life by introducing them to art, music, and dancing, they just laughed in their faces and said, okay, we'll just go back to destroying things now, which, it's another example of not everybody listens, that not everybody wants to be helped. But by that same token, it kind of the only way to get how they were able to get through to them was ultimately by overpowering them. Because, well, everything that our Lapis went through, it made her stronger, not just emotionally, but physically too. Because I want you to remember one very important thing about our Lapis. She stole Earth's ocean. And while standing atop a pillar that was reaching out into literal space, she was able to create water constructs of Steven and the crystal gems, was able to speak to Steven through said water constructs, and as a result, yeah, Lapis is a lot more powerful than people give her credit for. And so while these Lapises immediately laugh at her because she doesn't display her power, what I think works is that I think they needed a show of force. They needed to get that fear of God thrown into them. Because when you have someone that respects power above all else and just kind of brushes everything off, the only way you can get them to listen to you is by showcasing you're more powerful. And that's the thing what we see with Lapis here. As once the other two Lapises finally push her to the point where she says, you know what, fuck this noise, I'ma get serious, they finally start listening. She doesn't end up hurting them. At best, all she does is just mess with them and showcase that she could destroy them if she wanted to. She is that powerful. She just has to show them that she is strong enough to wipe them out with a single thought. But the fact that she doesn't shows how kind she is. They called her dull because she didn't use her full power on them. But in reality, that was just her showing mercy. This was her trying to be nice. And the instant they realized that she is stronger than them in power, well, that's when they finally start to listen. And I like that. I legitimately like that. Because sometimes, for some people, you do need to force the issue a little just to get them to listen. I'm not saying that it has to be done 100% of the time, because if you keep doing that, essentially you are going to become a different flavor of a bully. You're continually trying to force your ideology down someone else's throat. But in the case of these two Lapises, what they were doing was actively hurting others, and while Steven and Lapis tried to be nice and get them to see reason, they just continued spitting in their faces and were putting innocent people in danger with their actions, willingly on top of that. So as a result, if they wanted them to listen, they had to put a stop to what they were doing and just kind of sit them down and talk to them and kind of sit them down and say, look, this is what's going on. You can do whatever you want, but you can't keep destroying things because you think it's fun. That's, I think, what ultimately need to be done. And the thing is, by the end, they are not, while they are able to get the Lapises to stop, they don't force them to come back with them. Keep in mind that between the two Lapises that the Steven and our Lapis encountered, only one of them came back to Little Homeschool. All they really managed to do was just convince them to stop killing things because, well, they've encountered a bigger fish and they realized, okay, we don't want to piss her off because she could kill us. But at the end of the day, that was the only way they could get them to listen. Whether they want to come along with them and change their ways is completely up to them. It's just that if they continue causing a ruckus and hurting people, then it's going to become their issue again. So I at least like that. Like I said, I think that in that case, force was necessary to a point. And with the forced Lapis showcased, yeah, it was a nice way. It was the only way that I think the Lapis Lazulis could listen. As ultimately nobody was hurt, and they didn't force them to do anything they didn't want to do, besides stop killing people. Which again, I feel like that's a no-brainer. And if you genuinely are going to object to them saying, well, they said they could do whatever they wanted, now they're forcing them to stop this thing. Well, the thing they were trying to get them to stop doing was hurting innocent people, or innocent animals, or destroying planets. I feel like that kind of goes without saying is something you shouldn't be allowed to do. Just saying. But with that being said, another little thing that I liked about the episode was, believe it or not, nice Lapis. While I do like seeing more varieties of other cuts of gems, in the case of nice Lapis and rude Lapis, you very much get a sense that they have their own little dichotomy. And I call nice Lapis and rude Lapis the names that I do because you can immediately get a sense of their demeanors from when you first see them. Nice Lapis immediately comes across as more friendly and outgoing, despite the fact that she is actively destroying a planet. As once she sees Steven, she's like, "Oh, hi! Are you here to check on our progress? Aren't you proud of us?" Like, immediately you can tell that she's a lot more sociable and more extroverted than other gems. times. Whereas with Rude Lapis, just from the moment you see her, you get the sense that if she could, she would throw Steven out. If she could, she'd throw Steven out of there without even blinking, because quite frankly, she wants to get back to destroying things, and the only reason that they're not going to do it right now is because this kid is standing in their way. You and me again. You get a sense that Rude Lapis is very much an I do what I want when I want type of person, whereas Nice Lapis, while she does kind of have some more sicker interests, like with destroying things, she's definitely one of the more open-minded of the two. And the thing is, before she actually goes back to Little Homeschool, you do get a sense that she is somewhat interested in what Steven has to say. As before, she was already happy to see him when he and our Lapis came by and saw what these two were doing. And then likewise, she was the one that was getting into the dancing, as she actually thought, actually, this seems really fun. I want to do that, which I kind of like. But the only reason she stopped was because Rude Lapis gave her a look, which I think is a nice way of kind of showcasing how different these two are, beyond just one being slightly more polite and the other person being a little bit more rude. The thing is, Nice Lapis kind of comes across like a people pleaser. Like, yeah, that to a degree she does like doing what she does, but part of the reason she's doing it is because her friend is Rude Lapis. Rude Lapis is the one that takes joy in destroying things, while Nice Lapis, while clearly having fun doing it alongside her, is mostly doing it because that's what her friend says. And with the kind of personality that Rude Lapis seems to have, she comes across the type of person who would say, well, why can't I do that thing? I did before, so why not keep doing it? And likewise, in an attempt to try and stay on Rude Lapis's good side, Nice Lapis would go along with it and say, yeah, why can't we? Think of it like a bully who only has friends because he bullied the other kids into doing what he says. So, and that's kind of the impression of the dynamic that you get from Nice and Rude Lapis, as Rude Lapis feels like that she's kind of getting Nice Lapis to go along via some simple peer pressure, like saying, come on, don't you want to do it? That's what we've always been doing, so let's keep doing it. Nice Lapis is like, yeah, you're right. Now, they don't actually show that in the episode, but it is kind of shown, but it is kind of hinted at. And part of the reason why I think Nice Lapis was willing to, abandon Rude Lapis by the end of the episode was ultimately she was shown she was shown a bigger fish. It's just the difference between this bigger fish and Rude Lapis was that the bigger fish was kind. Our Lapis showed that she was more powerful and emphasized to her, no, this is wrong. You can't keep doing it. And then likewise, as a result, it essentially gave Nice Lapis the clarity to see she's a lot more powerful than her, yet she wants to be nice. So why can't I be nice? And as a result, it kind of makes sense why she would be the one to go back to Little Homeschool and abandon Rude Lapis, despite the fact that she was once helping her before. As again, based on what we can see, we're given the impression that she only did all this stuff because that's what Rude Lapis wanted, and Nice Lapis had to convince herself, okay, if she says it's okay, then it's okay. And then suddenly, in comes this bigger Lapis that even intimidates Rude Lapis, and she starts to think, is it really okay? And so that's what gets her to open up her mind. It's clear, it's like one of those, it's an interesting impression. I admit, some of this is my personal interpretation based on a few context clues, but it is an interesting one, and I like that we get to see that showcased in the episode, so there you go. But overall, though, Why So Blue is just a decent episode. At best, it's just filler, as while Lapis is a major character in the story, at the end of the day, her real contribution in this episode is just to kind of showcase reflect on how far her character has come, and to showcase how different she is from the person she was versus the person she is now. And I like that. It's just that it doesn't really add anything to her character. It's just mostly there to showcase that she's changed. While I do like seeing Nice Lapis and Mean Lapis, and ultimately what constitutes most of the episode is just Steven and Lapis trying to convince them, and then by the end finally getting them to knock it the hell off with their destroying things, and at least have one of them willing to come back to Little Homeschool so she can actually learn to do better. It's, again, basic stuff, but when you do look into it, you can see a little bit more layers to how the story is, which I dig. It's just that the main story for the episode is nothing really too big. It's just getting these two random characters we haven't seen before this episode to come over to the side of the Angels, and ultimately, while they succeed in stopping them from destroying things, well, they're not major characters. After, like, we never see Nice Lapis after this, and if we do, I'm guessing she's like just in the background of other episodes. So at best, the episode really at its core was filler. It really was just filler in the purest sense. Not awful filler, not bad filler, just ultimately decent filler, which again, there's more layers to it when you actually stop and take a look at things. But again, nothing too big or important. It's just there to kind of give Lapis some time in the sunshine, and then likewise move along to something else. So yeah, again, decent episode, but nothing too great. Nothing too great, though there are some layers to it. So yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. Like I said, Snow Day, still a great episode in my opinion. I still absolutely love it. And Why So Blue, decent episode. Decent episode. Nice to see Lapis in the forefront, though nothing really has changed about her character. I do like seeing them confront the other two Lapises. And I do like seeing all the layers that come through the episode and how they eventually convince the Lapises to join them. But overall, just a decent episode and nothing too grand. Just ultimately filler, but entertaining filler. So yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll hopefully see you next week as we take a look at the mid-season finale episodes of Steven Universe Future. So till then, I hope you have a good day, and take care.